This is a what's advertised is a 30 volt 1 amp power supply kit with adjustable output in voltage and current, or current limiting if you will. It was advertised as being a Highland. I don't have the price with me. Nowhere on the board does it say Highland. The reverse of the board is totally, oh no, there is a marking. It's got a number and a POWCC. Now that could be simply the board manufacturer. And here it says, I have not Googled that, I should. Like most of these Chinese boards, it's a nicely silk screened, nicely marked. Now, I made a schematic. I sat down with the empty bare board, and this is what I think the schematic looks like. I also made a drawing of the board. Now I may include parts value rather than just the designation of the part. And I went ahead and made a bill of material. Now I'll be correcting all three of these as well as adding information. What I would like to do here is at key designated points to be designated on the schematic. I'll write voltages down here. So, and maybe I'll just make ohms measurements and tabulate them down here. The first thing I'm going to do is just proceed to assemble it. There are no instructions. I mean, this is what you get when you buy a Chinese kit. And the way I start construction on something like this is generally, well, I try to mount the parts that are shallowest or protrude the least above the board. So I generally use resistors and diodes. Small signal diodes first, because they lay flat. Something like this is installed last because I've got to be able to turn the board over and solder it. Okay. This is just too big to put in first. Hoping I didn't lose any parts, I'll begin. For those who've seen me assemble these boards before, I use these QRP Me standoffs to temporarily support the board. I believe you can go to the QRP Me website. Now this one's going to obscure some of the mounting holes. When I get around to the components whose leads protrude through those holes, I'll move this. I have an assortment of vices, circuit board holders. Of course, when you're assembling these, it becomes necessary to rotate them to put the parts in, rotate them back to solder them, rotate them, rotate them. I prefer, when I solder, that the board be as close to the deck as possible. I work better that way. I'm not good at holding my hands up anymore. I lay them down on the deck. The board and these blocks are heavy enough that it doesn't easily slide around. But I can rotate it this way to get in here, and which I found hard to do with the vices. If I were you, I would not bother buying a vise for assembly of something like this. Buy these blocks, they're a little bit pricey, and you're done. You could just use 4 standoffs. These boards normally have holes in the corners and some nuts. You can get standoffs out of pieces of old equipment, or you can buy a standoff assortment from China. Components, sizes, or where there are a numbered component or a designated component. Like the resistors are marked 10K, 56K. The capacitors are marked 47 microfarad. But things like the diodes are not marked. So you sort of have to know what you're doing. You don't really have to know very much. Okay, the resistors. We've got a bunch of them here. And I'm only picking out the little small resistors. What I do, I like to have an ohm meter either on the bench laying here. I have one in front of me about eye height, and I'll set it to ohms. Where we have a package of resistors, it's safe to say that if I measure one of the resistors in this package, they'll all be the same. I don't normally test each and every component. I should, but I've just never had a problem. Now it's easier, instead of reading this resistor, for example, which is 33 ohms, and then hunt for the 33 ohm resistor. It's easier to pick up a pack of resistors, determine that they are 10K, and this particular resistor reads 9.953, which means it's a pack of 10K resistors. And then find out where they go. Easier than sorting through the pile each time. I don't like the gummy stuff, the residue that's left with this, so I'm going to cut them all off right here. Some people just pull them out of the tape, but I like to have everything as clean as possible. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 6 10K resistors. So I'm going to verify on my bill of material. I have 6 10K resistors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know that this is correct. I drink a lot of beer while I'm composing things like this. Now I like to make the resistors all face or all read one way. So the 1 is over here, tolerance is over here. Just going to bend them by hand. And this is marked 10K, which happens to be R5. I'll stick it in. push it down flat, turn it over, and pull the leads out. Not flat against the thing, but it won't fall through. And now you see why I need the standoffs. The leads don't touch the deck. And while we're at it, that's R5. R5. And you can, some people do this, they'll mark off with a check mark that they've installed that. And I intend to do that just so I can check for completeness on the bill of materials. At this point, I have all of the 10K and 2.K resistors installed. Now, I haven't soldered them yet. I don't put all the components on and turn it over and solder it. I don't like to work in a forest of needles sticking up. I put a few components in, solder them, nip off the wires, a few more. Now, 10K was the biggest pack. There's 6 of them. I saw a pack of 2. Here's another pack of 2. I don't know what they are, but I'll do the packs of 2. I did the pack of 6, which were all 10K. I'll be able to do 2 and 2. Then I'll be down to the individual resistors. I'm using lead solder. 63% tin, 37% lead. Come on, focus. 0.25 diameter, that's 64 millimeters, and it's internally fluxed. I do not have a smoke gatherer. If I wanted to, I could open his door, but I'm 71 years old and I've done this since I was 11. I may not solder them all. I might just solder the outermost, the ones on the perimeter. Of course, be careful when you cut them that they're the ones that are soldered. Work your way inward. Don't cut flush to the circuit board. Cut on the top of the solder ball. The flush cutters are not necessarily good. And wear eye protection. Now, once you've got them all put in and all the leads cut off, turn it over and look at it under a magnifying glass. And I'm going to just proceed to fill in all the rest of these small resistors. I think I've installed all the resistors but this big fellow. And you see, if you look at the height of the devices compared to the height of the blocks, they're all short little, that is close to the PC board. And so it still lays flat. Did have to move one of the blocks, that resistor right here interfered with it, although, well, I'm not going to bother moving it because there is a component here. So now I'm going to pull out all of the shallow, I'll call them shallow parts, that are in this bag. So these parts probably are also capable of laying beneath this line. The diodes are marked clearly with a white line. Now the wires on the diodes can't be they can be, but I don't recommend bending them by hand. And they don't lay tight against the component. They require some gentle persuasion, perhaps even some tugging. And of course, soldering on these is going to take a little more heat. So you want them to lay fairly nicely tight.